Welcome to Ephemeral Eyes. Welcome to Episode 3 of the Galaxy Plan. Before we find out more, please leave a like and subscribe to help this small channel become slightly less small. Here is a short recap. Ages ago, the planet Wind fell to ruin. With hope fading, its people embarked on a desperate interstellar exodus. Ancestral voices now echo within a vast, spectral starship guided by the enigmatic Jari and Zila. On the distant planet Fown, the healer Kariz faced a devastating storm. He found a wounded boy amidst visions of his own potential. Sheltering in an ancient dome, they witnessed a mysterious burst of energy. As the dome crumbled around them, they both vanished. Aboard an orbital habitat, Clarke, disguised as a simple cloner, shares a tender moment with her son Rodic. She hides the truth of his existence, keenly aware of the dangers that lurk in the shadows. Will we unravel the fate of the vanished boy and the healer? How does Clarke's secret connect to the events unfolding across the galaxy? And who or what are Jari and Zila, and what do they seek? Episode 3, Paradigm. Unlike those who relied on the slow grind of public transit, Clarke could have traversed distances at will. Instead, she embraced the anonymity of the system, a calculated move in her intricate game of deception. Her identity shimmered with a carefully crafted illusion, a false signal in the network that tracked everyone. Meanwhile, deep beneath her tiny pet shop, another Clarke hummed over precision instruments. Officially, she duplicated simple organs for medical use, and all kinds of pets. Unofficially, she was the best copier on the planet. In a world where the elite could reshape reality to their whims, Clarke was a master of deception. Her youthful beauty, once a source of unwanted attention, had been carefully masked through genetic alterations. Now, plain and unremarkable, she moved through the world unseen, a phantom working tirelessly to reverse death itself. This world, Nawal, its history stretching back to an era lost to the mists of time, was a fading star when Fown was yet unborn. This world had once stood at the forefront of civilization, but now there is no physical proof left of its existence. Clarke looks at her son. Rodic was a special child, his heart beating to a rhythm his mother alone understood. His eyes held a wisdom that belied his years, for Rodic's life was not his first. 4 years ago, a rare blood disease had claimed him, but Clarke, possessing a power unknown to the Nawal elite, had defied fate itself. She had brought her son back, a secret she fiercely guarded, for the elite would surely exploit such a power, twisting it to their own ends. Rodic had been dead for only 93 days. Clarke masked his death, fooling the vital trackers with a hastily grown clone, a crude imitation of life, just enough to deceive the system. It bought her time, as the clumsy clone operated on simple commands and mirrored activities of a severely sick human child. The boy's real brain was frozen in stasis, a snapshot from shortly before his body died. Never before has a human mind successfully been brought back. Bringing back a dead body by any means until this point always resulted in a person that was empty, lacking what you would call a soul. In her secret workshop, shielded from the ever-watching network, she labored day and night. First, reviving Rodic's stasis-frozen brain, then meticulously rebuilding his form to perfection, down to the faint scar on his knee. She pretended he had woken up from a bad fever, kissed him all over, and held herself rigid to avoid overwhelming him in those first precious moments. She cooked his favorite meal and watched with a quiet ache as he devoured it, his familiar energy seeping back into him. They talked until late into the evening, the boy allowed to sleep in her bed, like in the old days. The weight of lost eternities hung heavy on her heart. Nawal's central government pulsed with an alien rhythm, the hyper-evolved neural networks of its planners, directing the lives of 12 billion inhabitants. Each thought, every heartbeat, fed into the vast organic tapestry, shaping directives with a precision far beyond mere calculation. It had been 5 years since Clarke lost, and then miraculously regained her son. Now, the time for his initiation ceremony had arrived, a poignant reminder of a grandeur no longer fully understood. This tradition brought young people together on vast plazas, a vibrant pulse against the planet's fading glory. There, they'd exchange gifts and forge the first tenuous connections of adulthood. Every 10 days, these gatherings flared across Nowell's 8 continents, each offering a unique experience. Rodig, with the boundless yearning of youth, had set his sights on the northern city of Stein, a sun-drenched jewel on the warmest continent. The tunnel train, a marvel of their world, would whisk him away in a mere 20 minutes. "What treasure have you chosen for your gift, Rodi?" Kyrat asked, a hint of wistfulness in her voice. "A music crystal, Ma," he replied, the change in his voice a discordant note in the familiar melody of childhood. "Just like mine, but not connected to the central network. It will only sing for me and the one I give it to, someone with a music soul like mine." A tremor ran through him, a spark of anticipation igniting in his eyes. "May your festival be filled with wonder, son," she said. She reached into a small box, unveiling a gift for him. "What's that?" he asked, though a knowing glint flickered in his eyes. "What do you think?" she replied, a soft smile playing on her lips as she settled across from him. With quiet pride, Rodig lifted the lid, revealing the gleaming artifact within. "It belonged to your father," she said softly. Rodig nodded, his gaze locked on the ring. "Go on, Rodi," she urged gently. "Your pa kept it safe. Restored it just for you. He wanted you to have the same opportunities he did." Kyrat watched as Rodig slipped on the ring. In the stillness that followed, she saw a reflection of his departed father, his features etched with youthful concentration as he connected to the planetary brain, establishing his own personal environment matrix. Here he would find limitless freedom and connection, a space for unfettered exchange and boundless creativity. This connection, once formed, would remain with him for life. Knowing Rodig would linger in the network's embrace for a while longer, Kyrat rose to prepare for their journey. Solitude awaited her, yet pride filled her heart. With a sigh, she settled with a cup of tea near the window. The ring held the key to Rodig's future. It granted him access to the higher echelons of the world's consciousness, realms his father had painstakingly unlocked throughout his own youth. Passed down through 5 generations, the ring was a gateway to experiences far beyond what a basic network artifact could offer. Kyrat and Rodig hurried to one of the city's tunnel entrances. They stepped into the circular capsule. A gentle push, and the sensation of their incredible acceleration faded. While the boy lost himself in the warm embrace of the vast network, his eyes taking on a distant glaze, Kyrat pulled up a simulation of the rushing sky. The clouds, the blurring shift from day to night, the steadfast stars. Their unchanging presence soothed her nerves. Another gentle push signaled their deceleration. The boy blinked away the protective fluid. Mother and son looked at each other, anticipation mirroring in their eyes. Moments ticked by before the capsule finally came to a halt. The exit to the city of Stein materialized, but they remained locked in. No door was opened for them. A chilling pause. Kyrat checked the travel information, a flicker of unease blooming into full-fledged dread. A cold, dispassionate warning lingered at the edges of her awareness, an echo of the planetary consciousness. This capsule is under observation and will be sealed until further notice. Citizens, please remain calm and await a thorough inspection. Rodig, oblivious to the danger, shifted in his seat, his initial confusion fading. Kyrat's mind raced, the ghost of the message pressing upon her. It was the ruthless assessment of a predator that sent shivers down her spine. Was it the blood disease cure? The 93 days of non-existence? Something must have caught the vast network's attention. Something she overlooked. The capsule began to move, its destination no longer the festival grounds. "Ma, what's going on?" Rodig's voice, once brimming with excitement, was now edged with bewildered panic. Ma, the planetary brain is blocking me. Kyrit gathered herself, forcing a reassuring smile as she hugged her son. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding, Rhodey, she insisted, her voice a touch too bright. Just a small delay, a hiccup on the way to your festival. Then you can find your soulmate. As she spoke, another thought pierced the silence, an impersonal directive from the depths of the planetary network. Citizens, upon arrival at Courthouse 34, this capsule will be transformed into an interrogation cell. Please remain calm and cooperate at all times. But Ma, what's going on? Roddick's voice trembled, mirroring the fear now lodged in his mother's heart. That message. The courthouse. The words seemed to hang in the suddenly stifling air. Centuries bled into millennia, then into ages upon ages. Nira and Kiran moved with the measured precision of scientists drawn to an enigma. They were geoarchaeologists, part of a small outpost established on the high plain after the cataclysmic storm that changed the face of the planet. Theirs was a quest for knowledge amidst chaos, driven by the belief that the past held keys to deciphering the planet's unstable future. 8 shifts of the seasons of desolation had etched their mark into the shattered remains of the dome. Yet beneath the rubble and the relentless wind, a subtle hum persisted. Look at this stratification, Nira murmured, running a gloved finger through a layer of sediment exposed by the wind. These markings. An array of symbols, both familiar and alien, adorned the surface. They held the promise of a language lost with the dome's collapse. It's not a structural feature, noted Kiran. His sensor emitted a low thrum in response to a concealed anomaly. Energy readings are spiking. Driven by the thrill of discovery, they meticulously excavated the area. Beneath a layer of fractured stone, they unearthed a sleek, translucent shard, not entirely glass, yet not quite crystal either. Its facets shimmered with an inner light, as if pulsed by an unseen heartbeat. Remarkable, breathed Nira. Before Kiran could reply, a ripple coursed through the air. The fragment in her hand resonated, emitting a wave of light that cascaded over the ruins, throwing their carefully ordered world into disarray. Something crystalline seemed to explode within the great ball of white light. When the dazzling sensation faded, 2 figures lay motionless in the dust. Nira and Kiran cautiously approached. The flicker of an eyelid, a shallow breath, unmistakably alive. Sami and Koriz awoke to the feeling of soft pressure against their skin. A gentle symphony of mechanical whirs and beeps surrounded them. Koriz blinked against the harsh light filtering into the room. Beside him, Sami lay curled into a ball, his muscles twitching restlessly. Their bodies, unaccustomed to such physical constraint, felt unbearably heavy. Each breath was a laborious struggle, a stark contrast to the disembodied existence they'd left behind. A woman and a man in simple yet meticulously crafted clothing observed them from the bedside. They're regaining consciousness, the woman noted, her voice laced with anticipation. I'm Nira, and this is Kiran. Our research brought us out here. We brought you back to our outpost. Nira extended a hand, but Koraz merely stared at it in bewilderment. The concept of a physical form, even his own, seemed foreign. With painstaking slowness, he lifted his arm, the muscles stiff and uncoordinated. His own movements felt like those of a stranger's. We're using these systems to gradually acclimate you, Nira explained. The monitors ensure both your basic needs are met and that we don't overwhelm your systems. She gestured from the soft tubes running from Koraz and Sami to a complex machine in the corner. The rhythmic hum synchronized with the faint throb in their chests. It felt like a forced echo of their long-dormant heartbeats. It will take time, Kiran added, a hint of unease in his voice. We haven't encountered anything quite like this before. The words hung heavy in the expectant silence. Once Koraz and Sami drifted into a restful sleep, Nira and Kiran retreated to a cluttered workspace within the outpost. They moved with hushed urgency, faces illuminated by holographic projections of the dome. "Those readings," Yara muttered, her finger tracing an erratic waveform spike. "I thought the patterns in the western wastes were wild, but that's nothing compared to this. Something akin to a transmission?" Kieran countered, replaying the moment when the shard pulsed with light. Images of the two men materializing from thin air and falling gently to the ground sent a shiver down his spine. Yara paced, her mind tracing wild possibilities. The cataclysm, the storms. Could they have activated something? And with all the seismic activity on the planet, these relics might not be mere ruins after all. For a moment they stood in silence. It was more than just science. This could be the key to understanding their planet's upheaval, perhaps even harnessing its secrets. Koraz sat on the edge of a raised observation platform, a blanket draped over his shoulders. The outpost hummed around him, an alien symphony of machines and hurried footfalls, a stark contrast to the silent vastness he was used to. Sammy, looking less like a child every day as his body adjusted, perched beside him, mirroring his wide-eyed wonder. The morning sky unfurled before them, a canvas of swirling clouds that painted ever-shifting patterns. A gust of wind whipped through Koraz's hair, carrying the tang of distant rain. It was so much, too much. The sensations, once treasured invitations to awareness, bombarded him. He touched his still sore chest, the place where his heart labored beneath his skin. To be alive, to feel this overwhelming rush of sensation once more. It was an exquisite agony. Sami leaned against him, their shoulders brushing. 8 years of disembodied unity, and now this strange, beautiful gap between them. He watched birds spiraling in the far distance, each a tiny brushstroke against the sky. An ache bloomed in his chest, but it held a poignant sweetness. Alive. Alive in a world brimming with more than he had ever imagined. Koraz broke the silence, his voice hoarse and hesitant. "It is almost too much." Sami nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. The words felt impossibly small, a mere whisper against the grandeur of what they'd experienced. They sat for a long while, words unnecessary. 8 years of shared existence had forged a bond that transcended language. In the silence, they understood. The researchers Niara and Kieran had incredible technological tools at their disposal, things that Koraz didn't think were possible. The two returnees spent almost a year in the seclusion of the research outpost. Koraz was the only one who visited the city occasionally, getting to know the new situation. Sami was still too fragile. His body was now that of a young man, but he lacked experience. Mentally, he was a child who had spent 8 years practicing discipline so as not to lose his mind. Playfulness and games, such an important part of the maturation process, was alien to him, and he had to learn it again. The researchers had begun to clear the dome and restore its structure, as well as they could with the technology they had. Much of the dome was already recognizable, away from the populated areas of the plateau. No one ever wandered here, and Sammy sat on a rock ledge covered in grass and moss, his legs dangling over the research station. The sun was high in the sky, drawing a diffuse, bright circle in the crystal-clear cave lake. He had been looking down into the gigantic space for a long time, and his eyes could still not see any bluish shimmering in the cave wall, as he had perceived it then. He had explored this entire complex many times since then. He now knew every corner of the rock cathedral with all its hidden tunnels and reconstructed chambers. His body had become a fine measuring instrument for everything around him through discipline. Sami became the family for Koraz that he never had. And after Sami dared to come to the villages, the two were known there as grandfather and grandson. The small town of Yelpir was home to about 2,300 people, all of whom had found asylum and refuge in the land between Ango and Oist over time, and the city continued to grow. The Council of Elders had decided at the time to divide the land on the plateau fairly. Kona Ongo, friend to Korra's from what seems like a past lifetime, grew up to be a leader and took over the new position of security officer on the Council of Elders. Korra's also attended the council meetings and contributed valuable ideas. Because of him, a new kind of balance was soon found on the plateau. The new population density brought with it disagreements, envy, and misery. Kona, who learned a lot about overcoming his hatred for the technologized people, gradually recruited a police force from farm workers and newcomers alike. The system was clever and fair, and disagreements were resolved or at least discussed with respect for the others in a fair and balanced way. The biggest problem that the newcomers introduced was the Church of Change, whose devout followers, of which there were now quite a few here, kept wanting to dispute the rights of the old established. Sami walked ahead, while Korra's took his time and watched the growing community, like a painting he had started a while ago. Sometimes someone greeted him, and he nodded back benevolently. Others looked at him with wide, challenging eyes and a false smile. The aggressive attitude of the church was a problem that he could not solve with calmness and reason. It was actions that would count, and that was a dangerous outlook, because fanatics could interpret good as bad and vice versa. Bendig was 2 years older than Sami, a tall young man with the face of a fox. Bendig was a mystery to Sami, who befriended him a year after their reappearance. Sami and Bendig had built a strange friendship. Bendig, 2 years older but still a youth, was drawn to Sami's otherness. He'd pepper Sami with questions about the dome, about the 8 years of disembodied existence. At first, Sami was open, trusting, perhaps even a bit flattered by the attention. But lately, something had shifted in Bendig. His curiosity felt less innocent, more like he was searching for a weakness to exploit. Today, that shift became a chasm. Sami walked ahead, Korra's trailing at his usual pace, when he spotted Bendig surrounded by a cluster of other teenagers. A knot of unease formed in Sami's gut, but he pressed on. It was too late to avoid the scene. "And he says he can hear the rocks sing!" Bendig's voice rang out, mocking laughter cutting through the air. He mimicked the guttural sound Sami had described, the ones born from the dome itself. "This idiot thinks his time as a ghost made him special!" The cluster of teens erupted in jeers. Some were Bendig's regulars, others simply caught up in the cruelty of the moment. A few faces held a flicker of unease, but no one spoke out. Sami's steps faltered. It was like 1,000 tiny needles pierced his heart, the pain spreading like fire. His carefully controlled breath hitched, and the world seemed to tilt. Everything he'd confided in Bendig was now a weapon, twisted for the crowd's amusement. Struggling through the haze of hurt, Sami forced his body into stillness. His face became a mask, devoid of emotion. It was the only defense he had left. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Korra's approaching, a single furrow creasing his brow. An echo of fear rippled through their connection, but Korra's didn't understand the depth of the betrayal. "What's wrong, Ghost Boy? Why the silence?" Bendig sneered, emboldened by the laughter. He took a step closer, invading Sami's space. "Bendig, you useless runaway, make yourself useful, and help your mother sort the sacrifice texts for the double moon night." Onlad's voice, stern and sharp, cut through the air. Onlad was Bendig's father, an influential member of the council and unofficial leader of the newcomers. Bendig froze, eyes wide with a mix of shock and rage. The crowd dispersed, leaving Sami alone. The lingering stares were no longer curious, but suspicious, wary. He felt hollow, the last threads of trust shredded. Korra's reached his side, his touch a warm presence against the chill that had settled over Sami. "The mayor is expecting me, Sami. You're unfortunately not invited, but maybe you'll enjoy some tea and pastries?" The offer was simple, but Sami heard the unspoken words in Korra's tone, a silent acknowledgement of his pain, a promise of support. Sami sat in front of the town hall and took his time with his tea and pastries. Every now and then he closed his eyes and tried to listen to what Corys and the mayor of Yelpir were talking about. He could hear a lot if he concentrated, from the heartbeat of people standing near him to the crackling of the pastries in front of him in the afternoon sun. The interior of the stone town hall was still beyond his senses. Corys came back to him with a serious face. "Could you perceive what we discussed?" Sammy shook his head slightly and turned to Corys, who was staring into the emptiness between himself and the small barn opposite the town hall. "This man has dangerous ideas. He will replace the Council of Elders if we are not well advised." His gaze began to wander. It was Sami's turn to stare into the void. How can he make that possible? He's just the administrator of this city. Corys looked at Sami for a long time. More people will arrive here. We will have to be careful. Exhaustion finally claimed Sami this evening, when they returned to their friends Niara and Kieran, plunging him into a fitful sleep. Corys, ever watchful, sat beside Sami. Though his body ached, sleep was a distant luxury. Too many problems needed figuring out still today. He longed for the quiet vastness of the high plain, the comforting rhythms of a simpler life. Sami stirred, a pained whimper escaping his lips. His brow furrowed, muscles twitching against the restraints meant to ease his transition. Corys gently touched his shoulder, whispering a soothing word. The twitching intensified. Sami's eyes shot open, but they were filled with a strange emptiness. A low moan rose from his throat, words forming in guttural bursts, harsh and jarring, like the grinding of ancient glaciers. A heartbeat later, alarms shrieked. Niara and Kieran burst into the room, their faces mirroring the panicked readings on their instruments. "He's triggering it!" Kieran shouted. "The dome, it's resonating with him!" Niara stared at Sami, her eyes wide. "No, it's more than that." The energy readings emanating from Sami spiked, a wave of crackling power washing over the room. His guttural speech intensified, rising to a crescendo that physically shook the outpost. Corys stumbled, a wave of vertigo washing over him. And then, with a final gasp, Sami fell silent. Niara knelt beside Sami, her fingers checking for a pulse. Relief flooded her features, analyzed his brain activity. "He's there, but..." Her voice trailed off in heavy silence. "His brain activity is unbelievably high. It's like he is thinking with 1,000 human brains at once." Corys gently touched Sami, but there was no connection to the boy whatsoever. Did you enjoy listening to the third episode of the Galaxy Plan? I hope to see you again, friend.